You know that moment when somebody's audacity is so extreme you almost have to admire the commitment? Almost. It was a Saturday afternoon, the sort of golden, slow suburban heat that makes time feel like a promise. I was floating on my back in the pool, cold beer sweating in my hand, the kind of tired peace I only get after a brutal week. The sun hit the water in white coins, the filter hummed its steady little song, and everything felt exactly right. Then a new sound cut the scene. The sharp squeal of sneakers on concrete, a noise too crisp and practiced to be accidental. It had the cadence of entitlement. "Hey, old man, you need to get out, now." I opened one eye. At the pool edge stood a teenager, arms folded like a judge delivering a sentence. She looked 17, all angulated confidence in branded clothes, a haircut that cost more than most weekend groceries, sneakers that bit into the concrete like punctuation. Her smirk read, "I have never heard the word no in my life." "This is HOA property. My mom runs this neighborhood, so unless you want problems, you should leave." If only the kid knew. If only she knew exactly who she'd chosen to lecture. But before I spill the rest of this morning, take a second and drop a comment. Where are you watching from, and what time is it there? And if you love watching entitled people get their comeuppance, hit subscribe. You won't want to miss how this ends. Let me backtrack. 6 months earlier, I moved into Willowbrook Estates, one of those flawless suburban rows where every lawn is clipped to the same height and the HOA handbook reads like a pocket constitution. I'd been elected to a position that demanded I relocate to this county. I wanted a quiet place to come home to. Quiet, safe, a sensible property value. What I didn't realize was that I'd signed a lease with a little local tyrant named Victoria Hale. My first week here, Victoria arrived at my porch with a wicker basket and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. The muffins, the card, the 47-page welcome packet, it was all staged kindness with a seam of control running through it. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said, syrup and steel both in her voice. "I'm Victoria, HOA-president, just making sure you received our community guidelines." She said it like an announcement of ownership. She wore her authority the way other people wore jewelry, visible, expensive, meant to intimidate. Blonde highlights that probably cost more than a mortgage payment, leggings that looked like designer armor, a smile that sharpened into instruction. "I noticed your moving truck blocked the Hendersons' driveway for about 20 minutes yesterday," she added, as if 20 minutes were an act of war. "Just a reminder, we have strict parking rules. I'd hate for you to get a citation in your first week." A citation? For a truck that had been there while I unloaded my life? I kept my voice neutral. "I'll be careful," I said. Years in public service had taught me how to read the room. Victoria was a control freak with a hunger for dominance. I cataloged her in my head the way I cataloged evidence: predictable, eager, capable of cruelty disguised as concern. I didn't tell her what I did. That wasn't an omission born from deceit as much as strategy. Saying public service or county work let me be the quiet neighbor, not the man people felt compelled to perform for. That decision would prove both my worst and best choice in the months to come. A week later, I met her daughter, Brianna. She was 17 and smug, sliding through the neighborhood like a small monarch. First encounter. It was 2 a.m, Tuesday, the bass from her house hammering my windows. I knocked, polite. She answered like the volume was my offense. "It's not even that late," she said, eyes tracking me like I'd interrupted art. "My mom's the HOA president. We can do whatever we want." That little sentence, "we can do whatever we want," would become an anthem of entitlement repeated in the summer air. Victoria had been HOA president 3 years by then, and she'd turned the board into a private choir that sang only her notes. People on the board were either indebted to her or afraid of her. Meetings looked like gentle governance on the surface, but acted like verdict sessions underneath. Whether you were in compliance depended on whether Victoria liked your face that week. I started collecting the stories that would stitch a broader picture. Mrs. Patterson, the widow 3 houses down, fined $200 for gardening violations. Her ceramic gnomes allegedly violating Section 14.3 of the bylaws. They'd been there for 15 years, hands on hips as fixed as the mailboxes around them. When she protested, Victoria threatened daily inspections until she could find more violations. The Johnsons, a young couple with a new baby, were fined $500 because Victoria measured their old Honda and pronounced it 3 inches over the line. 3 inches, lowering property values, in her words? Brandy, no Brianna, learned fast. She parked her BMW across 2 spaces. She threw parties that rolled into the sunrise. She borrowed Mr. Chen's mower and returned it broken. When folks called her on it, Victoria would swoop in pastel armor and accuse complainants of harassment. The neighborhood learned the dance: get out of Victoria's light or be burned by it. People painted houses in approved colors, took down basketball hoops, and packed away Christmas decorations on January 2nd to avoid becoming her next project. The whole place began to breathe like people holding their breath, polite, strained, waiting. I tried to be neutral. My job was demanding enough, but I noticed the drop in conversation when Victoria passed, the tired tilt of shoulders, the way faces sagged when neighbors spoke of her last decree. Quiet resignation settled like dust. I had a few more run-ins with Brianna in the months that followed. Engine revving loudly at dawn as if to say, "We own the street." Friends parking in front of my driveway. Beer cans scattered into my yard after a party that spilled from her house to mine. Each time I stayed calm, logged it, and documented it. Brandon in the original story is your Brianna here, learning her lines. Entitlement taught at the family table. People trembled at the Mitchell, at the Hale name. I did not. That made me a problem. Victoria escalated tactics with me. Surprise inspections with a clipboard, letters demanding my grass be cut to an exact tolerance, complaints about my truck being commercial. I complied when rules were legitimate. I ignored them when they weren't. I never once told her my real job. That restraint would be valuable. By month 6, I'd seen enough. The Hells weren't merely annoying anymore. They were running a racket. Comply with Victoria's whims or suffer fines, inspections, and harassment. Let Brianna run wild and Victoria would make everyone else pay. Most of the neighborhood was too frightened or too drained to fight. They whispered to me in doorways and over hedges, voice low as they handed me details, dates, times, small humiliations that accumulated to cruelty. I started collecting everything. Photos from motion-activated cameras, video clips with timestamps, witness statements scribbled on napkins, paper trails of fines paid into accounts that didn't look like HOA expenditures. I kept files on my phone, copies in a leather folder, a spreadsheet with dates and names. I wasn't being dramatic. I was building the record. I wasn't just a neighbor anymore. I was a ledger. Then one Saturday, that blue, ordinary kind you forget until it breaks, Brianna decided to accelerate from nuisance to confrontation. She came to the edge of my pool, the place I paid property taxes on, and told me to leave. The realization hit me like sun on the back of the neck. Their arrogance had finally become direct threat. The time for notes and patience was over. She stood there in her new sneakers, smirking as if the whole thing were a prank. "I'm not leaving," I said, the words steady. Her face flickered with something close to surprise before the smirk reassembled itself. "No, this isn't private. This section is HOA recreational property. My mom showed me the maps." I laughed, not a polite cuckle, but a clear, incredulous sound that echoed on the tiles. "Son, I don't know what maps your mother showed you, but I have the deed, the county survey, and permits. This is private property. You're trespassing." Of course she called him son in the original story. Here, Brianna's entitlement loves the family armor. Her color climbed. "You're lying," she said. "My mom's right." I stayed calm. Years of dealing with difficult people taught me how to keep a steady temperature makes them overheat. I said, "Please leave," one more time. "You can't tell me what to do on my own land." Her voice cracked with that teenage rehearsed fury. "Do you know who my family is? We run this place." I paddled to the pool's edge and set my beer down, towel over my shoulder, and looked her right in the eye. "I know exactly who your family is, and I'm telling you now, leave my property." Her bravado wobbled. For a quarter second, I thought maybe she'd go. Then she pulled out her phone and jabbed at it like a nervous weapon. "You're done," she hissed. "My mom is going to ruin you." "I'll wait," I said, settling back into the water with the deliberate calm of someone who has patience on her side. And then, like a storm that knew the neighborhood's rhythms, Victoria arrived. Less than 5 minutes had passed. She had clearly been nearby on patrol. She swept through my side gate in expensive workout gear, hair impeccable, face set in the expression the whole block had learned to fear, righteous fury wrapped in designer fabric. She didn't address Brianna. She addressed me. "What is happening here?" she demanded, as if the matter were already decided. I stayed floating, water keeping me steady. "Your daughter trespassed on my property and ordered me to leave my own pool," I said. "I asked her to leave. You both need to go." Victoria's eyes narrowed. Her hand came up to her phone. You could see the readiness to weaponize documentation instantly. She scrolled, then thrust the screen at me like evidence delivered by decree. "According to our HOA maps, this is designated community recreational space," she declared, conviction practiced to sound legal. "You're the one trespassing." I looked at the phone briefly. The map was crude. Wrong lot lines, mismatched numbers, the kind of bad graphic work that reads like a fast forgery. It looked like someone had drawn property lines in Microsoft Paint and then added authority by shouting it aloud. "That's not a legal document," I said evenly. "It doesn't match county records. It's fabricated." The crowd, a dozen neighbors watching from behind curtains and porches, shifted. You could feel that ancient thing happening, authority questioned. Her voice took on that sharp edge she used to silence others. "The HOA owns this land. I have the documentation right here." She thrust the device again, her certainty like armor. I let the pause hang long enough for people to notice she was trying to make her claim by force of belief rather than proof. Outside, the street was a line of faces in windows and behind half-closed doors. Inside, Mrs. Patterson clutched her hands. The Johnsons peered from behind their blinds. The map looked wrong to anyone who knew how to read a property line. It looked manufactured to intimidate. And in that moment, with the afternoon sun making the water look like glass, the mask began to shift. "True," Victoria said, chin lifting. "And as HOA-president, I'm informing you that you're in violation of multiple bylaws: unauthorized use of community property, harassment of a resident," she gestured toward Brianna, who was now gleefully recording on her phone, "and failure to comply with HOA directives." Curtains twitched across the street. The front doors cracked open. I saw Mrs. Patterson on her porch, wringing her hands, the Johnsons framed in their window like cautious spectators. Everyone wanted to see. No one dared to speak. They'd learned that silence was cheaper. "The fines alone will be substantial, thousands of dollars, and I'll recommend to the board that we pursue legal action, maybe even have you removed from the community entirely." "For using my own pool?" I said flatly. "For violating community standards and showing total disregard for our rules." Brianna grinned, phone steady, eyes shining with cruelty. "This is going viral, dude. Everyone's gonna see what happens when you mess with us." I looked from Victoria to Brianna, then at the faces peeking through half-open blinds. The whole neighborhood had been hostage to this family's little empire for years. No one fought back because punishment always followed. "Victoria," I said, pulling myself out of the pool, water dripping onto the tiles, "I'm giving you one last chance. Take your daughter and leave my property." She laughed, an actual ringing laugh that sounded more like mockery than amusement. Or what? You'll call the police? Please do. I'd love to explain how you're illegally occupying community land and threatening HOA leadership. I'm not threatening anyone. I'm asking you to leave. We're not going anywhere, Brianna snapped, still filming. This is our neighborhood. You're nobody. Victoria crossed her arms, nodding. That's right. You moved in 6 months ago and think you can ignore our rules, skip our fees, do whatever you want. Well, that's not how Willowbrook Estates works. We have standards, we have order, and people who defy it face consequences. Consequences, I repeated. Serious consequences, she said, savoring it. I'm calling an emergency HOA meeting for Monday night. We'll discuss your violations and decide what to do next. I suggest you attend, though frankly, the decision's already made. She turned, motioning to her daughter. Brianna kept the phone trained on me, filming as I stood there, in my own backyard, dripping water on my patio. Oh, and one more thing, she called over her shoulder. That truck you park in your driveway, I'm having it towed tomorrow. Commercial vehicles are prohibited, and I've been far too lenient already. They walked off, Brianna's laughter echoing like nails dragged across calm water. Neighbors vanished back inside, curtains closing like stage curtains after a bad play. I glanced at my phone on the table, the red recording light blinking steadily. Every word, every threat, captured. Consequences, I murmured, a slow smile forming. Yeah, Victoria, let's talk about the consequences. That evening, after Hales left, a soft knock came at my door. Mrs. Patterson stood there, trembling slightly, holding a casserole dish like a peace offering. I saw what happened, she whispered. May I come in? For 2 hours, she told me everything, not just about her fines, but the entire neighborhood's 3-year nightmare under Victoria's rule. The garden gnome incident was just the prelude. She'd been fined for the shade of her mailbox, the size of her doormat, the brightness of her porch light. The total exceeded $3,000. Mrs. Patterson lived on Social Security. Those fines had cost her medications. I thought about moving, she said, tears catching the light. But I've lived here 30 years. My husband and I raised our children here. Why should she drive me out? You shouldn't, I said quietly. What can I do? She controls everything. The board is hers. I tried to fight one fine, and she tripled it for disrespecting HOA authority. After she left, I couldn't sleep. I sat at my desk reviewing 6 months of files, pictures, letters, timestamps. This wasn't petty harassment anymore. It was systematic abuse, bordering on fraud. Saturday morning, as I fetched my newspaper, Tom Johnson approached me, glancing nervously toward the Hale house. Hey, I heard about yesterday. Be careful, man. They're vindictive. When we first moved in, our car got keyed 3 times. We couldn't prove it was Brianna, but it stopped right after we paid one of Victoria's fines. That's extortion, I said. He shrugged. We've got a baby, a mortgage. We can't afford lawyers. She knows that. Over the next few days, whispers spread. Neighbors stopped me on evening walks, voices low, eyes darting around. Each had a story. The Chens said Brianna had borrowed their lawnmower, broke it, then Victoria fined them for unkempt yard. The Rodriguez's teenage daughter rejected Brianna's friend's attempts. A week later, their house was egged, and when they confronted Victoria, she threatened to sue them for defamation. She's untouchable, Marcus said bitterly. Her brother-in-law is a lawyer, her husband donates to half the local politicians. You can't win. I listened. I documented. My anger cooled into precision. Then the week after the pool confrontation, Brianna escalated. Monday, I came home to find her and 3 friends at my fence filming my backyard. Can I help you? I asked. Just checking community property, she sneered. Tuesday, she circled the street all day, revving her engine until the air vibrated. Wednesday, trash dumped across my lawn. caught on camera, her BMW idling at 3 a.m. Thursday, 2 tires slashed when I was at work. No witnesses, but I didn't need any. The pattern was handwriting. I documented everything. Pictures, videos, timestamps. I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was preparing prosecution. But I needed one final piece, something undeniable. Friday night, I worked late. When I got home close to midnight, I found destruction. Beer bottles floating in the pool, pizza boxes torn open. Someone had vomited in my flower beds. My grill, a $1,000 stainless steel model, lay half submerged. But the worst part was the silence. Neighbors had watched it happen and done nothing. Mrs. Patterson answered her door, pale. "They showed up around 6, she whispered. "Brianna and 20 of her friends. I called Victoria. She laughed, said, 'Kids will be kids.' I wanted to call the police, but—" "But what?" I asked. "She told everyone that if anyone called the cops on her daughter, she'd make our lives hell. More fines, more inspections." I looked at her, a 72-year-old woman cowed into fear in her own home. Something in me hardened, not anger exactly, but clarity. "Mrs. Patterson," I said softly, "how would you feel about testifying to what you just told me?" "I couldn't," she whispered. "She'd destroy me." "What if I told you she can't? What if I told you her power ends Monday night?" Her brow furrowed. "How could you possibly guarantee that?" I smiled. "Because on Monday, at that emergency HOA meeting, I'm finally going to introduce myself properly." Saturday morning, I filed formal reports, not with the HOA, but with my own office. Trespassing, vandalism, harassment, destruction of property. Every log, every witness, every clip. Victoria had called her emergency meeting to destroy me. She didn't realize she'd just scheduled her own trial. Monday came with air so tight it hummed. The meeting was set for 7. By 6:30, the parking lot was full. Flyers in mailboxes, Facebook posts, whispers at fences. Victoria's campaign was efficient. She'd painted me as a rogue threat to property values and safety. I arrived on time. Jeans, button-down, nothing flashy. The leather folder under my arm looked like paperwork. Inside it was a bomb. The community center overflowed. Every seat filled. People lining the walls, eyes trained on me like spectators at an execution. The air smelled of perfume, coffee, and nerves. At the front table, Victoria sat in a pale blue power suit, camera ready, every hair in place. Beside her, 4 board members shifted uncomfortably. Front row, Brianna Hale, smiling, phone out, ready to film what she thought would be my humiliation.
Willowbrook Estates. I walked in at exactly 7. Jeans, simple button-down, nothing flashy, nothing that would tip what was coming. Under my arm, a leather folder that could change everything. To everyone else, I probably looked like a slightly nervous homeowner about to be judged. The community center was packed, every chair filled, people pressed along the walls, heads tilted for a better look. Dozens of eyes tracked me as I crossed the aisle. The air felt electric, not supportive, but charged, waiting. Not supportive, hungry. Victoria had turned the evening into entertainment, a public execution for daring to challenge her power. She sat at the head table with 4 board members who looked like they wanted to be anywhere else. She wore a power suit that cost more than most mortgages, hair immaculate, makeup stage ready. Front row, Brianna Hale, smirk locked in, phone already up and recording. "Good, you decided to show up," Victoria called as I stepped inside, her voice carrying to the back row. "We can begin." She stood. The room fell silent. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," she said, sweet concern lacquered over steel. "We have a serious situation threatening the safety, security, and integrity of our community.
As you know, our rules exist to protect Willowbrook standards." She pressed a button. The projector snapped to life. My house, my truck, then me frozen beside my pool on someone's shaky phone video. "This man," she said, pointing at me like evidence, "moved here 6 months ago and has shown nothing but contempt for our rules. He parks a commercial vehicle in violation of Section 4.2. He refuses to maintain his property to standards, and, most seriously, he has been illegally occupying HOA common property." A murmur rolled the room. I spotted Mrs. Patterson in back, scared. The Johnsons sat stiffly. Tom's jaw was iron. Marcus Webb stood by the door, arms crossed. "Last Saturday," Victoria's voice rose, "he verbally assaulted my minor daughter. When Brianna politely asked him to vacate community property, he grew aggressive, threatening, and showed total disregard for HOA authority." Click. New slide. Screenshots from Brianna's edited video. A clipped phrase of mine. "I'm telling you to leave," stripped of context. Me stepping from the pool, framed to look hostile. A still of my face, caught mid-blink, recast as menace. "My daughter felt genuinely unsafe," she added, resting a protective hand on Brianna's shoulder, "and that's when I knew we had to act. We cannot allow someone who threatens children, seizes property that isn't his, and openly defies the rules we all agreed to follow," she said. The board nodded in puppet unison. "I'd like to call Brianna Hale to speak about her experience." Brianna stood, perfect posture, perfect tremble. "I was just walking on Saturday and saw this guy in the pool off Oak Street. I know it's community property. My mom showed me the maps. I was super polite. I asked if he knew. He got aggressive right away, told me to get lost, used language I shouldn't repeat. I felt threatened, and so I called my mom. When she arrived to calmly explain, he got worse. He even threatened to call the police on us when he was the one trespassing." I had to admire the performance. The kid had learned from a professional. Half-truths lacquered over fabrications, delivered with conviction strong enough to sway the uninitiated. "Thank you, Brianna," Victoria said, patting her hand. "I know that was difficult." She turned back to the room. "Since that incident, this man has continued to harass my family, threatening calls, filming our home. My daughter is afraid to walk down her own street. The board and I have discussed this extensively. This level of violation cannot be tolerated. I'm recommending immediate action. Fines totaling $15,000 for multiple offenses, immediate removal of the commercial vehicle, and if there's no compliance within 30 days, legal action to force sale of the property and removal from the community." $15,000. She said it like a number, not a weapon. "This isn't vindictive," she added, in a tone of practiced reason. "This is about protecting all of you. If we let one person ignore rules, harass families, and occupy land illegally, where does it end?" She stared directly at me, triumph glittering. "This man has no respect for authority, rules, or community. He needs to go. Does the accused have anything to say in his defense?" Every eye settled on me. I stood slowly and picked up my folder. "Actually," I said, calm, "I do." "Make it quick," Victoria snapped. "We've heard enough." I walked to the front. She hesitated, then stepped aside, irritated that I occupied her stage. "First," I said, opening the folder, "the property issue. Victoria claims I'm occupying HOA common property. Interesting, because this is my property deed, properly recorded with the county. House at 742 Oak Street and all surrounding land, pool, deck, easements are private property. Always have been." I held the document so the seal caught the light. "Here's the original survey. Here is the county plat map. And here, I added, sliding out another page, is a letter from County Zoning confirming that no portion of 742 Oak Street has ever been designated HOA common property. Victoria's smile thinned to nothing. Those could be forged. I'm not, I said. They're public records. Anyone in this room can verify them. I turned a page. Now, harassment. Victoria claims I've threatened her family, made harassing calls, surveilled her home. Serious claims. Here are my phone logs for the past 6 months. I tapped a line. One call to Brianna, last Tuesday, 2:47 p.m., asking her to stop leaning on her horn in front of my house. Duration, 43 seconds. She hung up. Victoria went pale. You recorded a call with my daughter without permission. In this state, one-party consent is legal. But that's beside the point. One polite call isn't harassment. I set the logs down. As for surveilling your home, I haven't been near your property. What I have filmed is my property, which brings us to Friday night. I lifted a tablet. The projector flipped to my feed. My cameras, my yard, Friday, 6:15 p.m. Play. Brianna's BMW slid into frame. Then Brianna, with a small crowd, hopping my fence, swarming my pool, cracking bottles, screaming, shoving my grill. The room went dead quiet. This lasted roughly 4 hours, I said over the footage. Trespass, vandalism, destruction of property. There's also underage drinking. Victoria flushed crimson. That's taken out of context. I said, there are 6 hours of footage. Would you like all of it? Brianna had stopped recording. Her eyes were glued to the screen, the realization that her fun had been captured in HD. And it wasn't just Friday, I continued, sliding more pages. Pattern of conduct. Monday, trash dumped on my lawn. Tuesday, horn harassment, engine revving. Wednesday, more trash. Thursday, 2 slashed tires. Clip, clip, clip. Each time-stamped, each with the BMW's plates visible. Now, the neighborhood, I said, turning to the crowd. Mrs. Patterson, your garden gnomes. She stood, trembling but steady. She fined me $200, said they violated aesthetic standards. They've stood there for 15 years. The Johnsons, I said. Tom Rose, $500 because our Honda was supposedly 3 inches over the line. Victoria measured it herself. Marcus, your fence. He stepped forward. Spray paint. I reported it. She fined me for visual blight and gave me 48 hours to repaint it at my expense. One by one, voices rose, people who had been silent for years. Wrong color mailbox. Daily inspections threatened. She warned my insurance about unapproved renovations when I questioned a fee. My daughter said no to Brianna's friend. Our house got egged. Victoria shook her head, frantic. This is coordinated slander. You're all lying. Actually, I said, they're telling the truth, and I can prove it, because I haven't just been your neighbor for 6 months, Victoria. The room held its breath. I've been investigating you. Investigating? Who do you think you are? I reached into my pocket and set a small gold solution on the table. A badge. Gasps exploded around the room. My name is Michael Reeves, I said, sheriff of this county. And you, Victoria, you and your daughter are in a lot of trouble. The change was instant, color draining from faces, phones dropping, whispers turning into shock. That's not possible, Victoria stammered. You said you worked in public service. I do, I said. I serve the public as their elected sheriff. I moved here 6 months ago when I took office and kept my profession quiet so I could live like a neighbor, not a badge. You made that impossible. I placed a thicker folder on the table. For 6 months, I've documented everything. Fabricated violations, unlawful fines, intimidation, and your daughter's criminal conduct. You can't. This is entrapment, she blurted. Entrapment requires inducement, I said. I didn't make your daughter trespass, vandalize, or drink. I didn't make you abuse your position, file false reports, or threaten residents. You did that. I documented it. I turned to the board. Did any of you know Victoria has been misappropriating HOA funds? That's special assessments often mapped to deposits into her personal account. They stared, stunned. That's not... We never... One began. Here are the records, I said, sliding spreadsheets. HOA accounts versus Victoria Hale's banking statements. The correlations aren't coincidences. They're embezzlement. Victoria gripped the table. You have no right to my financial records. I had probable cause and a warrant. Everything was done legally, unlike much of what you've done for the past 3 years. I faced the room. Here's what happens now. Brianna Hale will be charged with criminal trespass, vandalism, destruction of property, and contributing to the delinquency of minors. Victoria Hale will be investigated for fraud, embezzlement, and abuse of authority. The State Regulatory Board will audit the HOA's books. You can't. This is entrapment, she shrieked. My brother-in-law is a lawyer. We'll sue you for everything. Please do, I said. Discovery will be educational. Brianna shot to her feet. You think your little badge scares me? She stepped in close, fists clenched, voice shaking between rage and fear. My family owns this neighborhood. We own you. Brianna, I said quietly, sit down. Or what? She was in my face now, chest forward, bravado fraying. You going to arrest me for having a party? Give me a break, old man. Then she made her mistake. Her palm hit my chest in a hard shove. The room froze, one clean, collective intake of breath. Brianna Hale, you're under arrest for assault on a law enforcement officer, criminal trespass, vandalism, destruction of property, and contributing to the delinquency of minors. What? Her bravado collapsed. No, I barely touched you. That's not assault. Any unwanted physical contact with an officer is assault. Congratulations, you just upgraded your charges. I keyed my radio. Dispatch, Sheriff Reeves, I need 2 units at the Willowbrook Community Center. Suspect in custody. Don't you dare, Victoria screamed, throwing herself between us. You leave her alone. This is abuse of power. Ma'am, step back. You're interfering with an arrest. I don't care. You're not taking my daughter. The doors opened. 2 deputies, Martinez and Chen, entered, calm and ready. Deputies, I said, please escort Mrs. Hale away from the suspect. Victoria fought them with words. Harassment, discrimination, do you know who we are? As she guided her aside. Brianna bolted toward the side door. Martinez moved faster. In seconds she was cuffed, and Chen began the Miranda. You have the right to remain silent. This is so unfair, Brianna sobbed. I didn't do anything. It was just a party. You have the right to remain silent, Martinez said. This is so unfair. I didn't do anything. It was just a party. It was just a joke. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Victoria's meltdown was spectacular. Collapse into a chair, spring up, finger stabbing in the air. I'll destroy you. My brother-in-law will sue you into oblivion. You'll lose your job, your house, everything. Your brother-in-law is a tax attorney in Denver. I checked. Corporate tax. Criminal defense isn't his forte. A board member rose. Victoria, we need to discuss this without you. She whirled. Excuse me? If what the sheriff says is true, misappropriated funds, the board must act. You spineless coward. I made you. Without me, you're nothing here. You threatened my wife. Gerald said quietly. "Said you'd cite us if I didn't vote your fence amendment. I complied because I was scared. I'm done being scared." Another board member stood. "She said she'd tip my insurer about unpermitted work if I didn't support her assessment hikes." A third. "She doctored financials. When I questioned a discrepancy, she threatened my clients." The dam broke. Years of intimidation spilled out at once. Victoria scanned the room, realizing the empire was collapsing in real time. "You're all traitors." "After everything you've done," Mrs. Patterson stood, voice steady, "for 3 years you bullied, threatened, stole. It's over, Victoria. We're done." The hall erupted, voices overlapping, fear melting into anger, then into relief and solidarity. Deputy Chen escorted Brianna out, head low. Victoria screamed after her, "Don't say anything! Don't talk to them! We'll get a lawyer!" "Ma'am, you need to calm down," Martinez said. "Don't tell me to calm down. Do you know who I am?" "Yes, ma'am. Someone about to be arrested for obstruction if you don't step back." Victoria finally faltered. "You can't prove the financial stuff. Those records could be from anywhere." "They're from your bank, obtained with a warrant. Your signatures on withdrawals, your prints on falsified reports. You left a mile-wide trail." "This is a witch hunt," she said, voice thinning. "No, this is accountability." Gerald straightened. "Emergency vote. All in favor of removing Victoria Hale as HOA-president, effective immediately." Every hand went up. "Motion passes unanimously. Full audit, full cooperation with law enforcement." Victoria stood there, hair slightly undone, power suit suddenly small. 3 years of tyranny ended in under an hour. "This isn't over," she tried. "It is," I said. "Deputies, please escort Mrs. Hale out." At the door, she twisted back. "I'll sue all of you. The HOA, the Sheriff's Department, everyone here." "You're welcome to try," I said. "Discovery should be interesting." Silence, then Tom Johnson clapped. Mrs. Patterson joined. Marcus Webb. The room surged with applause. "Thank you," Mrs. Patterson said through tears. "You stood up for yourselves," I told her. "I just opened the door." Gerald approached. "Sheriff, the HOA apologizes. We should have stopped her years ago. We were cowards." "You were victims. Now make it right. An HOA that serves, not terrorizes." "We will. Tomorrow, community meeting. Transparency, new elections, new bylaws." For an hour, neighbors handed me evidence. The prosecutor's office would feast. Marcus asked, "Why did you wait?" "I needed it airtight," I said. "One incident can be spun. 6 months of pattern, documented, witnessed, sticks." It stuck. 3 weeks later, in county court, Brianna Hale faced consequences. "Miss Hale," the judge said, "your pattern shows you think you're above the law. Trespass, vandalism, destruction of property, and assault on a law enforcement officer. These aren't pranks." Sentence, 200 hours community service, 18 months probation, $12,000 restitution to me, plus counseling and anger management. Victoria sat rigid in the gallery, beside her tax attorney brother-in-law, wisely silent. The state HOA regulator opened a full probe. The audit found $40,000 plus misappropriated over 3 years, fake fines into personal accounts, assessment hikes never voted, vendor contracts to shells linked to Victoria. Civil suits erupted. Mrs. Patterson sued for $3,000 and emotional distress. The Johnsons filed. The Chens filed. Marcus filed. 17 families joined a class action against Victoria Hale and the old board. One more twist. Neighbor David Rodriguez, a civil rights attorney specializing in HOA abuse, had documented her for 2 years. "When you revealed yourself, it was time," he told me. 6 months after the meeting, the Hale house went on the market. Quiet listing, no open house. Leaving wouldn't stop judgments from finding them. I saw Victoria once more, loading boxes. Our eyes met. No apology, no threat, just defeat. Brianna I saw at community service, orange vest, trash grabber. At lunch she edged over. Sheriff Reeves, I'm sorry. For the pool. For everything. Sorry you got caught, or sorry you did it? She thought. Both. More the second now. I didn't understand the damage. My mom called it maintaining standards. I see the bullying now. I said, consequences teach. You're 17. Decide who'll you'll be. Willowbrook transformed. The new board repealed nonsense. Gnomes marched back to lawns like tiny victors. The color list died. Parking rules became sane. Fines turned rare and fair. The HOA returned to its job: maintain, facilitate, unite. Gerald asked to host a community pool day, your pool, voluntary, to show we're a neighborhood again. It was perfect. Kids splashing where Brianna once tried to evict me, Mrs. Patterson's potato salad, the Johnsons' baby's first lesson, Marcus at my grill, rescued and shining. No one watched for Victoria. People just lived. Tom handed me a beer. Part of me wishes you'd told us day one. If I'd led with the badge, Victoria would have been careful. We might never have gathered enough to end it. Silver lining to the secret identity. Something like that. As evening warmed the water copper, I remembered why I took this badge. Not power, protection. To stand where fear ruled and make space for ordinary good. Victoria and Brianna believed power meant fear and authority meant obedience. They never learned the truth. Real strength lifts people higher. Brianna's pool clip did go viral, just not the way she hoped. The unedited trespass and demands became a cautionary tale. Comments poured in. This is what's wrong with HOA culture. That kid finally faced consequences. Good on that sheriff. Justice balances. You can push people only so long before they push back. You can abuse authority until real authority notices. You can rule by fear until someone fearless shows up. 6 months later, Willowbrook thrived. Property values rose because people wanted to live where neighbors stand together. Budgets were public and quarterly. Meetings were collaborative. And me? Just another neighbor. People waved when I mowed, borrowed tools and returned them, brought pie, not for the badge, but because I belonged. What I learned is bullies live in silence. Victoria and Brianna ruled not because they were powerful, but because everyone felt powerless. The moment voices rose, the spell broke. You don't need a badge to stand up for what's right. You need courage to document abuse, tell the truth, stand together. Change doesn't arrive with a lone hero. It arrives when ordinary people decide they've had enough. If you faced an HOA tyrant or any petty despot, how did you push back? And if stories like this remind you justice is real, stick around. Standing up to bullies is a story worth telling. Karma doesn't follow our calendar, but it always arrives. And when it does, it's beautiful.